In 1998, millions of Koreans lined up to give away their gold wedding rings. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. They melted down 227 tons of gold worth over $2 billion to save their country. And that story? That's not even the craziest part of how South Korea became rich. By the end of this video, you're going to understand how the poorest country on Earth became one of the richest in just 70 years. But first, I need to show you something almost nobody talks about. Look at this number, $67. That's what the average South Korean earned in an entire year in 1953. That's less than Haiti, less than Ethiopia, less than almost every country in Africa. American officials basically wrote Korea off. They called it a rat hole. That's the actual word they used in official reports. General MacArthur himself said Korea would take 100 years to recover. Because 70 years later, this bottomless pit would own the memory chips inside your phone, right now, as you're watching this. How? It started with one man, and he was terrifying. His name was Park Chung-hee. In 1961, he grabbed power in a military coup. He was a dictator. He crushed opposition. He arrested journalists. He ruled with an iron fist for 18 years. And he's the reason your Samsung phone exists. I know how that sounds. Stay with me, because this is where the story gets wild. Park did something no dictator in history had done before. He walked into meetings with the richest business families in Korea, the Samsungs, the Hyundais, the LGs, and he made them an offer they literally could not refuse. He said, "I will give you free money, government loans, no interest. I'll give you tax breaks. I'll ban your foreign competitors from entering Korea. But if you don't hit the export numbers I set for you, I will destroy you." He wasn't joking. If they missed their targets, Park would cut off their loans overnight, publicly humiliate them, and in some cases, have them arrested on corruption charges. Careers destroyed, families ruined. He wasn't playing games. And here's the twist that changed history. It worked. Every year, Korean exports doubled, then tripled. Factories exploded across the country. But there was one more ingredient. One thing Park couldn't create with money or fear, and without it, none of this would have worked. Korean parents, specifically Korean mothers. I want you to picture this. It's 1965. You're a Korean mother. Your husband works 16-hour days in a factory for pennies. You have 3 children. You have exactly enough food for 2 meals a day. What do? Korean mothers made a choice that changed the world. They skipped meals, they sold their jewelry, they worked second and third jobs cleaning houses at night, all so their kids could go to school. This wasn't rare. This was every family. Korea has a word for this, 교육열, education fever. And it went so extreme that today, on the day of the college entrance exam in Korea, the entire country shuts down. Stock markets open late. Planes are grounded so the noise doesn't disturb students. Police give students free rides in squad cars if they're running late. I'm not making this up. This is real. And that's the thing nobody tells you about Korea's rise. It wasn't just factories. It wasn't just Park Chung-hee. It was millions of mothers skipping meals so their kids could read books. But even with those kids growing up educated, Korea was about to make a bet so crazy the entire world said they'd fail. 1972. Korea was making cheap t-shirts and plywood. Park Chung-hee stood up and announced Korea would start building ships. Massive ocean-crossing ships. The World Bank laughed. Western economists called it economic suicide because building ships requires engineers, steel mills, ports, decades of experience. Korea had none of that. The Hyundai founder, a guy named Chung Ju-young, went to a British bank to borrow money for the shipyard. They said no, obvious. So Chung pulled out a 500 won Korean bill. On it was a picture of a turtle ship, a Korean warship from the 1500s. He looked at the British bankers and said, "Korea was building iron warships 300 years before England. We know how to build ships. We just forgot for a while." The British bank gave him the money. Within 15 years, Korea was one of the top shipbuilding nations on Earth, bigger than Britain. And they didn't stop there. In 1975, Hyundai released its first car, the Pony. It was ugly, it was slow, it broke down constantly, but it was Korean. Today, Hyundai is the 3rd largest car maker on the planet, and that entire empire started with one man showing a picture of a turtle to skeptical bankers. But right when Korea was on top of the world, everything almost collapsed. November 1997, Korea's currency collapses overnight. It loses half its value in weeks. Massive Korean companies, Daewoo, Kia, start going bankrupt one by one. Unemployment triples, homeless populations explode, suicide rates skyrocket. The Korean government has 2 weeks before the country literally runs out of foreign currency and shuts down. They beg the IMF for a bailout, $58 billion, the largest emergency loan in history at that time. But the IMF's conditions were brutal. They demanded Korea sell its companies to foreigners, fire millions of workers, and hand over economic control. Koreans watched their national pride being auctioned off to Wall Street. They called it the Second Korean War. That's how devastating it was. And then, ordinary Koreans did something the world had never seen before. Grandmothers stood in line for hours to donate their wedding rings. Newlyweds, 3 months into their marriage, gave up their gold bands. Children donated their gold birthday gifts. Over 3.5 million Koreans donated 227 tons of gold, worth more than $2 billion, voluntarily, for their country. No government forced them. No law demanded it. They just did it. Korea paid back the IMF loan nearly 3 years ahead of schedule. And when they came back for something bigger than money. They came back to conquer the entire world's culture. Take out your phone. Right now. Look at it. There's a 70% chance the DRAM memory chip inside was made in Korea, by Samsung or SK Hynix. Not designed by Koreans. Literally manufactured in Korea. Your laptop? Same. Your car's computer? Same. The AI data centers running ChatGPT? Filled with Korean chips. Here's a number that will blow your mind. Samsung alone brings in more annual revenue than the entire GDP of countries like Hungary, Kuwait, or Ukraine. One company. From a country that was starving 70 years ago. But here's what makes Korea's rise different from China or Japan. Korea didn't just conquer factories, they conquered your feed. Squid Game, the most watched non-English series in Netflix history, ever. BTS, the first band since the Beatles to release 3 #1 albums in a single year on the Billboard 200. Parasite, the first non-English film to win Best Picture at the Oscars in 92 years. This wasn't luck. This was planned. The Korean government literally invested billions into pop culture as an economic strategy in the 1990s. They saw what Hollywood did for America and thought, we can do that too. And they did. But the story of how Korea got rich has a dark side. And this is the part nobody wants to talk about. There's a name most people outside Korea have never heard. John Tae-il. He was 22 years old. He worked in a garment factory in the Peace Market in Seoul in 1970. His workday was 14 to 16 hours, 6 days a week, in a room so packed with workers they couldn't stand up straight. Ventilation? None. Breaks? None. On November 13th, 1970, John Tae-il walked into the streets of Seoul, poured gasoline on himself, and set himself on fire. His final words were, "We are not machines. Obey the labor laws." He died so Korea could hear him. And even today, Korea has one of the longest average working hours in the developed world, the highest suicide rate in the OECD, and the lowest birth rate on Earth, 0.72 children per woman in 2023. The miracle came at a cost paid by real people, millions of them. But those workers, those students, those parents, they also fought back. In 1980, citizens in a city called Gwangju rose up against the dictatorship. Hundreds were massacred by their own military, but they didn't stop. Through the 1980s, Koreans marched, they bled, they died, demanding democracy. And in 1987, they got it. Korea's first free election. The miracle wasn't given to them, they took it. 70 years. That's all it took. From $67 a year to $35,000 a year. From ruins to global superpower. Countries with 10 times more resources, India, Brazil, Nigeria, the Philippines, they couldn't do it. So what did Korea have that they didn't? It wasn't oil, it wasn't gold, it wasn't luck. It was a leader ruthless enough to force change. Mothers desperate enough to sacrifice everything for their kids. Workers brave enough to die for better conditions. Citizens loyal enough to give up their wedding rings for their country. And a nation that refused to accept that being poor was their destiny. But there's one more thing about Korea that most people miss, and it might be the most important part of this whole story. Look at this satellite image at night. That dark space, that's North Korea. Same people, same language, same history as South Korea. 70 years ago, they were the same country, same starting point. North Korea today, starvation, dictatorship, around $1,300 per year income. South Korea, $33,000, democracy, global superpower. Same people, same DNA, same culture. The only difference? The choices they made. That's the real lesson of Korea's rise. Countries aren't rich because of luck, or resources, or geography. They're rich because of choices, repeated every day for decades. And Korea, they're just getting started. Right now, they're investing billions to lead the next wave of AI, robotics, and space technology. If this story hit you the way it hit me, subscribe, because next week I'm telling you the untold story of another impossible country that rose from nothing. You won't want to miss it.